Welcome to the Hoops and Dreams podcast. This episode is going out just before the World Cup break, and we've got just two more matches to go before we actually finish. My name is Brian Fisher, and along with a guest, I will be reviewing recent games, discussing the odd topic or two, and briefly looking ahead to future matches. Matthew, who is also known on the Hoops and Dreams forum as QPR from White City, is this podcast guest, and a warm welcome to you, Matthew.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, delighted as ever. We'll be discussing as a whole the last two games, Norwich against QPR, which was on the 2nd of November, which we drew 0-0, for those of you who don't remember, and QPR against West Brom on 5th of November, which we lost 1-0, which I'm sure some of you are trying to forget. Norwich was perhaps a great game for the neutral to watch, as it had end-to-end play and no side gaining total dominance. But it was a nervy one, I think, for the fans to watch. And it ended up in a goalless draw. Matthew, do you think that was a fair result?
Yeah, both teams had chances to win. We hit the post. They hit the post twice, but I think overall, both teams had the majority of possession, but did create enough chances to win the game. Both teams just weren't clinical enough. Pookie had a big chance in the first half he should have put away. And they had the chance at the end, which was a bit of a snapshot from Hanley. And then luckily for us, it was the last kick of the game and he missed the target. Willock, great impact off the bench. It's good to have him back. And yeah, he was inches away from scoring. So I think overall, I think they had the better with the first half, but I think we had the better with the second half. So yeah, I think the draw was a fair result.
I think I'd agree with that. And I think that match sort of proved that we could match the teams at the top, in the top six.
Absolutely.
Realistically, the R's should have therefore been looking to beat any side languishing at the bottom of the championship, which is what you'd expect of a club that's got top six ambitions for the season end. But QPR ended up as losing 1-0 losers against the Baggies. Was that a shock result for you, Matthew?
Bit of a shock, but overall disappointing. I felt we didn't really turn up. I don't know about you, but I felt West Brom read our shape straight away. They had the high press from the get-go, but I felt from every position they had us covered. They kept Willock and Chair quiet throughout the game. We didn't create many chances. The only chance that we had in the first half was when Dykes had a shot. And then second half, overall wasn't a great game to watch, but obviously they took their chance from the set piece, and I sort of knew, I think most of the fans knew that was the only goal of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, to be honest with you, the loss against West Brom hurt. Not just because the Baggies have got Matt Phillips and Furlong there, and nobody likes to lose to ex-players, but because we never really established the dominance we should have. There was not enough movement out to the wings to stretch West Brom and create more space. There was often only one option instead of perhaps two or three that were open to the ball players, as they looked up, because the players were not making themselves available.
Yep.
In contrast, at Norwich, we did all of that and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the more important question is, why was it applied at Norwich so successfully and got a well-earned draw, but not against West Brom? Was the fact that Amos was playing deeper in place of Johansson, and perhaps even Willock's return, changing the dynamics? Answers on a postcard, please, addressed to Mr. Michael Beale, Esquire, if you would. I've certainly got no idea on this.
Yeah, he made a few mistakes in the West Brom game as well. You see Sinclair Armstrong warming up for ages, and we were saying, like, bring him on for the last 10 minutes. He can make an impact. He could try and scare their centre-backs with their pace and power, but he took too long. 90th minute was too late for me, and he didn't do anything. He didn't have time to do anything in the game. So, yeah, a bit of a disappointment that was.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because if you bring a player on as an impact player, you've got to give him enough
Yep,
time to get on there and get going.
exactly. Yeah.
Totally agree with that. Okay, so out of all of this, though, we ended up with 1 point out of six. Our league position, amazing enough, we didn't drop out of the top six. Was
No.
fifth behind Burnley, Blackburn, Sheffield United, and Norwich. Um, well, it's could do better, wouldn't it be on the score report? I think.
Yeah, there's some games this season where I think the loss against West Brom, I tweeted it. I think it was our poorest performance at home this season. I just felt we just didn't, like I said, we didn't show
Mm,
what we can do. I think in the Blackpool game that we lost early in the season, I felt we played all right overall, especially in the second half. I think we should have got at least a point in that game. Rotherham, I felt we should have at least won the game. So I think overall, the games at home, we've been creating enough chances to win them. I just
yeah.
felt in West Brom, I think we didn't create enough, and then they took their chance. And I think we just didn't deserve it in the end.
An interesting thing was said by Mick Beale, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. That we let ourselves down in the final third, and I think that really
Yeah,
does sum it up. We're
yeah.
just not scoring goals, are we? That's the truth.
No, we have enough creative players. You can
Mm.
just Chair Willock, they normally do their triangles on the left hand side, and I think you got to credit West Brom. They completely had a low block. They blocked us off, but at the same time, we had enough time on the ball to try and pick a pass, and we had options with Ethan Laird and Kenneth Powell. He wasn't used enough, in my opinion,
I
on the
agree.
other side, and too many misplaced passes at times. And yeah, I just felt we just didn't have that bravery to find that killer pass.
Well, I think this nicely segues into the first topic that we were going to
Mm,
discuss. It certainly is topical. We've gone from games where Lyndon Dykes alone has scored a double brace to 3 games without scoring a single goal. So my questions are, I think it's 2 questions really. Should we be concerned at the lack of scoring? And what does Mick Beale and or the team need to do to address this issue, do you think, Matthew?
Uh, like I said, we have enough creative players. I think on their day, you can see we can score 2 to 3 goals. I remember uh, quite well the whole game where we completely blitzed Hull within the
Mm,
first 20 25 minutes. And just the play that we had with Chair, Willock, and Dykes. Dykes was between those two. And if he's between those two at his best, then he can take chances. He did it
yeah.
against, he did it last week. We won 3-0. So, at his best, well, he's in the right area, he can finish. But if he's isolated, then he's quiet. And yeah, he didn't get much involved in the West Brom game. That was the real disappointment, I think.
Mm,
When he's by himself, he needs players like Chair and Willock to be around him so they can pick up the ball and then they can go into the box. But he didn't do that at all against West Brom.
yeah, I always feel, and maybe I'm being unfair, but I always feel that Dykes does need a strike partner. He plays
Yeah,
better with.
no, I agree.
Anyway, I can't really put my finger on why we firstly dominate some sides but not others, and secondly why we can score almost freely sometimes and not others.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously, the ability to dominate and score goals is heavily influenced by the opposition. But the sides are briefed. They work on tactics, on the days before the game, and players are selected to deal with those threats and weaknesses of specific opponents.
yeah,
So those preparations not being effective enough is only a starting point. I think it also has a lot to do with the mental and physical demands to be at peak performance level every 3 to 4 days in the relentless championship that we're in. Um,
mhm,
then, of course, I think we need to add to that the lack of depth in the striker department. I think that does concern me.
yeah. Yeah, I think overall, I think Bon, he's not quite at it for me. I think he's not that impact sub that we need. I think overall this season, the subs haven't really made an impact off the bench. You think about Macaulay Bon, you think about Taylor Richards, he's haven't had much game time. Andre Dazelle off the bench. We haven't had, except for Sinclair Armstrong, I think, you can accept him. The
Yeah,
rest of the bench, they haven't really made an impact when they've come on. So,
yeah, and I
yeah,
think
I think,
you've got to
go
bear in
ahead.
mind that obviously Sinclair as well is still learning. He's
He's still
making
raw.
mistakes. In fact, he's making, you see him doing things that Eze was doing when he was learning. He's not tracking back enough
No,
to help out the defense when we lose possession. But he's learning still. But you're right.
yeah,
Of all of them, he's the only one who's come up alongside Dykes, and you can see, oh yeah, okay, there's something happening here.
yeah, I
All
agree.
right, let's move on to topic number two. Um, do you think that we should be worried that players such as Amos, Dykes, Chair, Field, Dieng, Laird, Balogun, and Parle are all reaching peak performance just as the World Cup break comes along? Um, could the break in momentum mean that their peak performances will suffer?
I wouldn't say all the players. I think the players I worry about is the likes of Chair and Dieng because they'll be at the World Cup and they'll most likely be involved, especially Dieng for his country because he done well in the previous tournament that he won, the Africa Cup of Nations. So I'm sure he'll play a few games and Chair will come on as a sub some of the time and he might get a start. But I remember back to last season when he was pulled up to the squad and towards the second half of the season he sort of burned out really. So yeah, at the end of the day, these are human beings. You don't want to burn out these players, but Chairs alongside Willock, he's our most creative player this season, and it's a big worry that if he plays a lot of games in the World Cup, hopefully for us, fingers crossed, they get knocked out pretty early, but most likely he'll play a few games and get a few minutes. So that's what I'm worried about, and even Dieng as well. So yeah,
Yeah, it's going to be pretty unrelenting out there in Qatar as well.
hmm
The climate. The thing you mentioned about Ilias Chair is something that I thought about as well. And in fact, I was watching an interview where he openly admitted that he had problems when he came back, getting back into it.
hmm
And it's, I think, again, we come back to this thing about mental and physical peak performance all occurring at the same time and making you that much better a player. Um, it must be hard for these guys to switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off.
yeah,
So anyway, let's see what happens. I mean, the
hmm
other one that we could mention is Dykes, of course. When he goes away for international duty, he puts his heart and soul into it, and it invariably
yeah.
ends up with an injury.
Yeah,
So
at the same time with that, I'm sort of like I'm not annoyed, but they're not in the World. They're not even qualified for the World Cup, but he's still got to do friendlies and that sort of break. I'd rather him have sort of a break, have a little sort of
yes,
pre-season to readjust, get back in the season when it comes back in Boxing Day if we come back,
yeah,
instead of playing international friendlies, because I think that's just pointless for me. He
yeah.
could get injured up before, and then we're in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Mick Beale and his staff, I'd be sitting there watching all of the games with great concern, hoping that all of my guys come back in a fit state.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Okay, so let's move on. A quick look at the predictions for the next two games. The first one is QPR Huddersfield, which is Tuesday, the 8th of November. I'm actually going to that one. Um, this was rearranged from the time of the Queen's death, sadly, sad death. Um, Terriers have had a great season last year, but this season they're languishing at the bottom of the Championship. As with West Brom, this is then a side that QPR should be capable of winning against without any problems. But we all know the Championship is very competitive, and this is, after all, QPR. So, Matthew, win, draw, or loss?
I've gone for a win. I've gone for a win. I think we just need a response from Saturday. I think hopefully the players heard the fans their discomfort really of the performance. They just felt let down really. Just I think the players know themselves they can be much better than that. I get West Brom have the new manager, they have the new bounce sort of thing, but you can't really, especially early on in the game, you can't really just sit back and let them just press you and let them show their powers basically of just sitting back and they defend well. You've got to try and show what you're good at really, and they didn't show up. So yeah, I think we've got to have a response where, on paper we should win. Um, Huddersfield have not rarely score. Obviously bottom of the league. So they're low on confidence, and we've got to attack that. And in my opinion, and we've got to get from the get go, and try and get it really.
I think you're absolutely right. And in fact, what you said about the bounce back, I'm hoping there is a reaction from the players, and I've gone like you for a win because of that. Let's hope we're both right.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It would be typical QPR if we do, end up losing 1-0 again.
QPR never does anything easy. All right.
No.
Okay. After that win against Huddersfield, let's be positive. We on Saturday, the 12th of November, we're playing Coventry away. That's the final game before the World Cup break. The R's, as I said, are away. They face a side that's played 2 less games than us. So their league position really is rather misleading. But the R's should feel able to dominate play, I feel, and so reduce any goal threat, even if scoring is not a given. And that's obviously where we have a problem. I guess some players may be worried about getting injured just before they join their respective national sides, but surely we can expect to win, Matthew.
Yeah, I've gone for a win. A little bit heart overhead because I'm going to that game, so I'm praying for a win as well. So yeah, but you make a good point there with possibly you look at Chair and Dieng, how they're going to perform in the game. Will Chair sort of restrict himself during it because the World Cup's just a week after? But yeah, I expect us to sort of dominate possession and try and create chances. The only thing I'm worried about is Coventry. I've sort of picked up. They obviously had a difficult start with their stadium, and they couldn't play games. But they have picked up form recently. They beat Blackburn at home, and they've recently beat Watford away. So they've picked up a bit of form, and that's what I'm worried about. If we, just turn up and think we can't take it for granted because of their lead position. You got to think about the occasion and forget about the conditions. We just got to try and have the right attitude. And I feel we've got to have back-to-back wins going into the break just to keep that feel-good factor, because it's been such a good start to the season, such a good start. And the last couple of games have cast a few bit concerns, but overall, this team has been good. And if we get back-to-back wins, then it will be a feel-good factor.
Yeah, you make a good point about that. It's very, very true. And also, I think the thing that in a way sums up Coventry's situation is that QPR actually had to make an announcement that the game really will be played at Coventry Stadium. That's how doubtful life is for them at the moment, the poor things. So I've got a feel for Coventry. There's so many clubs now that are struggling, for various reasons. You've got to feel for them. In the past, Coventry's been very much a head tennis type of side, which we don't tend to do very well against for some reason. Although we are getting better at our heading, I've noticed. So let's hope. I hope you have a really great game in that one. I've gone like you for a win. I think it'll be a hard game, but I think we'll snuck it with perhaps a 1-0 win. That's what I'm going to go for. Oops, I don't normally like to say the score. Anyway, we'll see how things go. I know QPR's next fixture after that is, amazingly enough, is not until Sunday the 11th of December, when we entertain the high-flying Burnley. That's going to be an interesting one. So anyway, up until then, enjoy the World Cup break, even if you're supporting England. And if you're a QPR player, stay safe, please. Well, that's all we have time for on this episode from the Hoops and Dreams team. Other than for me to offer my usual thanks, this time to my guest, Matthew, for joining me. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you.
To editor Dave, as ever, for cutting out all the errors that I make. And for you for watching. Do click on subscribe if you're watching this on your YouTube channel. And do add a comment or two. We really do enjoy hearing from you. I'm Brian Fisher, and this was a Hoops and Dreams QPR podcast. Come on, you R's.
Come on, you R's.
We know who we are. You know who we are. We are QPR.